About 12 years ago, I jumped into vocational ministry. In other words, getting paid through ministry. And my first jump into that was with a ministry called Youth for Christ. Youth for Christ has been around Tuscaloosa for a long time. They are a national ministry, in fact, an international ministry. They have a lot of different branches of ministry. The branch that I was involved in was a branch called Campus Life, a ministry that reached out to unchurched teenagers in high schools and middle schools. I was there for about 3 years, and then I left that to go to seminary. And then when I got out of seminary, I was on staff part-time here and then part-time with Youth for Christ for a few years. So I know a lot about Youth for Christ. Youth for Christ is a ministry that Grace Church has supported for many years. Many of you may know the name Mike Green. Mike Green has been the director of Youth for Christ here in Tuscaloosa for, Romel, 25 years or something, probably, a long time. So today, we have Romel Gibson who's going to be here. Romel is on staff of Youth for Christ. Let me paint the picture of Romel here. In my first stint at Youth for Christ, we were in a number of high schools and middle schools around the city. And one of the high schools that we were not in was Central High School, which is like right in the middle of Tuscaloosa. It has a lot of history and a lot of ties to the Tuscaloosa community. And I remember Mike Green came into one of our staff meetings one week, and he threw out the question, how do we get into Central High School to minister to unchurched teenagers in that school? And me, in my young, opinionated self, I said, there's no way. You can't get into that school. There's too many challenging dynamics to reach that school. So that's a pipe dream, Mike. Those are the things you say when you're in your 20s, right? But then we found Romel. And Romel owns Central High School. And it blew me away. I really didn't think it was possible. To see the level of ministry and the way that he has entrenched that school with adult volunteers to reach the hearts and lives of unchurched teenagers there. It's unbelievable. It's so incredible that Romel is part of a team that consults the National Office of Youth for Christ for how to do ministry. And so the influence that he has is not just local, it is spread to chapters of Youth for Christ ministries literally all over the country. It's incredible. He blows my mind. And so I'm very grateful to have him here today. His wife, Q, is with him, and their 3 girls. So Romel's good, but Q is fun. So if you want to have fun, Q is the one to go to. I'm just so grateful to have them. Grace and I have got to know them over the past few years. And I just invited Romel to share with us today and to preach for us as well. So he's going to do that here in a second. Before he comes up, I just want to show you a video. This kind of paints a picture a little bit of Youth for Christ, specifically the Campus Life ministry that Romel is involved in. So let's take a look at this.
Students, they are our future, but less and less of them are followers of Christ. This generation of youth are the least churched we have ever seen, and almost 30% of them identify as atheists. In the United States, there are over 69,000 middle school and high schools. In those schools are over 24 million students between the ages of 11 and 17. Of those students, at least 15 million do not regularly attend church. Campus Life, a ministry of Youth for Christ, has reached out to these kids for over 45 years. There is Campus Life ministry spanning the country from San Diego, California to Long Island, New York, and everywhere in between. With over 1,000 ministry sites, we engage over 100,000 students each week, and that number is growing daily. The question remains, with so many lost students, how can we possibly reach them all? How does Youth for Christ reach this skeptical generation that is unaware of their need for a Savior? We don't wait for students to come to us. We intentionally go into their world in order to initiate new relationships, whether it be on campus, hanging out at the skate park, or rooting for their team on a Friday night. We go where students are. As these relationships form, students enter into the community of campus life. One natural way that happens is through Club. Club is a weekly high-energy gathering where community is built and God's story is told. We also create opportunities for students to engage in deeper relationships with campus life leaders through shared experiences. We spend time with students to earn the right to be heard, model Christ-like behavior, and be a listening ear. As relationships grow, we connect with students and give them individual attention to ask questions, share doubts, and navigate life. We also provide opportunities for students to gather in small groups where we discuss relevant issues that they face and their spiritual needs. As we do this, we help them connect their story to God's story. Trips are an opportunity to bring students out of their environment. Through unforgettable activities, Christ-sharing relationships, and a clear presentation of the gospel, we see God change lives forever. Throughout this journey, we work together with the local church to help raise up lifelong followers of Jesus. But that is just the beginning. We engage Christian students who are committed to personal growth and influencing the people around them for Christ. These students then join us in the mission of sharing God's story with their friends and raising up lifelong followers of Jesus. Many of them even return to Youth for Christ as volunteer or staff leaders. So, with so many lost students, how do we reach them all? By empowering a relational army of student and adult leaders to engage students in authentic, Christ-sharing relationships, one student at a time.
So it gives you a little glimpse of what Romel is doing week in and week out. Romel, we're coming up, I want to pray for you, and then it's yours, man. Lord, thanks for Romel. Thank you for his friendship. We have laughed together, cried together, failed together, succeeded together. And I thank you for him. And I pray that I give him a clear heart and clear mind as he shares with us from your word. We thank you for allowing us the opportunity to have him and his family here with us this morning.
Well, good morning. I am so excited to be able to share with you this morning. Thank you to your pastor and my friend, Ben Towers, for this awesome opportunity. I'm so excited to be able to share with you the ministry that I've been able to lead for the last 8 years, but not only share about that ministry, but also to challenge us all in the word of the Lord this morning. I'm very fond of a lot of the people who are part of this church. And I was informed recently, actually, that Grace is actually our longest standing partnership. In fact, Youth for Christ in Tuscaloosa has been in existence since 1968. And I was told that Grace, your partnership, has been in effect since the early 70s, or somewhere in the 70s. So technically, you've been partnering with us since the very beginning, long before any of us who are currently there ever got here. So without you and your long-lasting partnership, there's no way we would have been able to continue to do what we're doing. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Again, I am definitely excited. And as I stand here in excitement, I'm reminded of the story of a man who also, a pastor, who was excited to share the word of the Lord with his congregation. So he got up early that morning and he began to get dressed. And he was running his sermon over in his mind and just excited about what God was going to say in the service. And as he was running the sermon over in his mind, he went to the bathroom and he was shaving and still thinking about his sermon, was paying more attention to the sermon than he was his face, and he accidentally cut himself. Well, he easily put a Band-Aid on it, continued to get dressed, and he went on his way to church. Well, as he got there, and it became time for him to preach, he stood up and he said, you know, they're going to notice this Band-Aid immediately, so let me just go ahead and let's just deal with that. So he stood up and he says, guys, I know this Band-Aid is an eyesore, so let me just tell you, I was so excited to get here this morning to share the word that as I was thinking of my sermon at home, I accidentally cut my face. He went ahead and he preached. And at the end, as one of the treasurers was looking through the collection plate and counting the money, he found a note. The note was from someone in the congregation and it said, "Dear Pastor, next time, think about your face and cut the sermon." And although there's humor in that, I will take the advice of that joke, and I promise you I won't be before you very long. There's this ongoing joke, rumor, whatever, about the African American community, and we stay in church a real long time. And I promise you, I'm not one of those preachers. I'm going to make a commitment to you right now that I will have us out by Wednesday afternoon. For sure. But as we think of YFC and our mission, I want you to listen intently to these words. YFC reaches young people everywhere, working together with the local church and other like-minded partners to raise up lifelong followers of Jesus, who lead by their godliness and lifestyle, a passion for sharing the love of Christ, devotion to the Word of God and prayer, and a commitment to social involvement. That, in a nutshell, is Youth for Christ. And when I think through our mission, I'm reminded of several what I would consider to be success stories of students who come to know Christ through our ministry locally. But one in particular stands out to me. It's a young man who I now refer to as my little brother. His name is Jaquez. I say the name Jaquez, I'm sure my daughter's lighting up right now because he's like a big brother to her. And Jaquez was a student I met at Central High School. I would go to lunch every week, multiple days sometimes, and the intention when you go to lunch is not only to make connections with the faculty and staff, but it's really to meet new students, for them to learn your name, for you to learn their name, as well as to kind of touch base with some of your regular students so that they won't feel like they're left out. And so this particular day, it was a Monday, and I was at the school and was meeting new students, and a group of our regular students came through, and a girl in the group said, "We're going to eat in the courtyard outside today. Can you come join us?" I told her sure, and so I waited until the lines were finished getting their food and everyone went to the courtyard, and I met them there. And this girl had on a jacket that was particularly a larger jacket, and I think it was an armor jacket. And so I immediately looked at that as the reason to start conversation and maybe make some jokes. And so when I walked up to her to talk about how big the jacket was on her, she says, no, don't tease me. Usually our classroom is cold, and so a student who also sometimes gets cold allowed me to wear his coat. He's going to come in the courtyard to get his jacket. His name is Jaquez. She said, he's a perfect kid for campus life. You should invite him to campus life. And so as Jaquez started walking out to the courtyard to meet her, she saw him. She said, don't look down, here he comes. And if her face could be an emoji, it would be the heart eyes that jump out. She said, he's coming. And so when he walked up to our table and he said hello to everybody, kind of gave her the side hug, and he didn't rush her to give him his jacket, he talked a little bit, and I stood up and said, hey man, you should come to campus life tonight. He said, first of all, I don't know who you are, and you don't know me. And I said, your name's Jaquez, right? And he's like, oh, y'all playing a joke on me. Somebody at the table told you who I am. I never gave in and let him know who told me. I just simply said, dude, everybody in the school comes to campus life except you. You should be a part. That didn't win him. He didn't come. He didn't come. However, because I knew his name now and I then told him my name, we built this on-campus friendship where we would talk regularly. And I even stopped inviting him to campus life. I just wanted to get to know more about him during the time we would be at lunch. But one day, that same girl invited him to campus life, and he showed up. Now, something about a girl. I couldn't get him to come, but a girl asked him to come. But he showed up. And when he showed up, she was right. He was the perfect campus life kid. He had a whole lot of energy. And so our games and crowd workers that we do in the beginning was perfect for him. But it was not the games necessarily that made him perfect for campus life. It was when we would do the portion of our club meeting that we call our discussion that I realized this is a very articulate young man who can communicate exactly what he's feeling and what he's going through. And man, as he's trusting us more, he's unpacking so much about his life that is amazing that he's been able to stand here and talk about it, considering how difficult it was. It was during those times that I found out that Jaquez was from Atlanta, but because his mother was deemed to be an unfit mom, she lost custody of him, and he had to move here with his biological grandfather and his grandfather's wife. His mother, not long after he had moved here with his grandfather, his mother was murdered in Atlanta. He never knew his biological father, and because of those difficult nuances of his life, he began to act out in school, particularly in middle school, had behavioral issues and problems. He was a student at West Lawn Middle School. It was during that time of him unpacking his story and us spending more and more time together that my heart turned toward him. I wanted to do anything I could to connect him more to not only campus life, but to interject Christ in his story. I found out that his grandfather was an avid churchgoer. In fact, he was a deacon at their church, and he brought Jaquez to church on a consistent basis. Yet, this whole idea of Jesus, sin, any of that, never really took root in his heart. But it was one of our camps we created. It's a local camp that we did simply because those students there, it's difficult to get them to some of our national camps. And so we created an alternative, which we call Camp 48. It's simply 48 hours. We have 48 individuals that can be a part of it. And we only charge them $48 to attend. Well, it was perfect for him, and he showed up to our Camp 48. It was at Camp Tuscola, as a matter of fact. So thank God for men like Jimmy Moore and the partnership we have there. But it was at Camp Tuscola where God really got a hold of Jaquez's heart. He became keenly aware of the disease called sin that was a part of his life, and the cure was Jesus Christ. And at Camp Tuscola, Jaquez gave his heart, his life, to Christ. Well, not only did he do that, but what I was privileged to do was begin to live life with him and help him navigate through this thing called growing in your relationship with Christ. Because again, our mission is to see students become lifelong followers of Jesus. And so Jaquez graduated, and he came back to be a part of my staff, but guess at what school? West Lawn Middle School, the same school he used to get in trouble in when he was younger. He came back to that school to invest in the life of another generation of young people. So while at West Lawn, again, one day leaving lunch, I'm headed out the door, the assistant principal sees me as I pass his office. He screamed my name and asked me, "Before you leave, can you come back to my office?" And as I walked in his office, there were 4 young men sitting there. You could tell that they had had some kind of heated situation. And particularly this one young man, I was just, for the sake of his privacy, I'll just call him Chris. But this young man, Chris, was sitting there, was really short, but he had the biggest personality, the most anger out of everybody. Everybody was bigger than him, but he was doing all the talking about how he could fight all of them. That was definitely not true. But when I met him, again, like my heart did with Jaquez, for some reason out of all of them, I wanted all of them to know Jesus, but this Chris, I just felt a connection to him. And so I pulled him to the side. The principal says to me, "Can you talk to him? Because if he doesn't listen to you, I'm going to suspend him." Well, Chris says, "Can you help me not get suspended? Please, I don't need to get suspended." And I said, "All right, I'll do you one bit. If you can commit to me that you'll come to Campus Life every Thursday morning, I'll beg your principal not to suspend you." He agreed. So he began to come, and it was there that I connected Jaquez to Chris. And just like my heart connected to him immediately, Jaquez's did too. They were like brothers, to the extent that for one of our national middle school camps, Jaquez decided, I want this kid to know Jesus so badly that I'm going to take my own money and invest it in his life so that he can go to camp. And now they go to camp, same camp that Colin Sherrill has volunteered at and been a part of creating the same culture that we're talking about. And so there's many partnerships throughout this ministry. At this particular camp, this kid goes there, he gets in trouble the very first night. I get a call here in Tuscaloosa the very first night, we're sending him home. And I begged them, no, this is a kid who needs what we have. Please let him stay. And they did. And at the end of that week, Jaquez called me, voice shaky. I could tell he was crying. And he said, dude, you won't believe it. He said yes to Jesus. Now, I wish I could tell you that his story was just all peaches and cream. It was all good after that. No more issues. He said yes to Jesus, right? No. He still has a difficult home life. Very unstable. A mother who I've heard out of my own ears hear her say, I don't want to have anything to do with you. A father who's very unstable. But Jaquez and I have been spending nearly hundreds of hours with this kid, yet and still, because he has to go home to the unstable conditions of his home life, he's still been negatively influenced and making bad decisions. But see, that's the reason why I appreciate people like Terry Harmon, who goes here, who in many ways our ministries intertwine, if you know what I mean. Some of our students don't necessarily follow down the right path, but I'm grateful to God that he's placed people throughout our city who, even when they make mistakes, there are people who are there to still share the love of Christ. What's going on with a lot of these students is that they are really negatively responding to the storms they face in their lives. That they've been handed somewhat a bad hand, and they don't necessarily know how to deal with the pressures and the storms and the wind that they're faced with. It would be easy to judge them and say they should have some kind of trust in Jesus, but if they have never heard his name or don't have a relationship with him, what does that even mean? And so before we judge them on how they handle their storms, do me a favor, and I want to look at a passage of scripture this morning, our text, found in the book of Mark, chapter 6. And we'll look at verses 45 through 52. And as we read that, I want us to think of this overarching theme this morning. Just simply says, will you get in the boat with them? Verse 45, and it reads, immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. And after he had taken leave of them, he went up on the mountain to pray. And when evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land. And he saw that they were making headway painfully, for the wind was against them. And about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. He meant to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. And he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased. And they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. Now, just a little backdrop on this story. Jesus, at this point, has just finished feeding what is known as the famous feeding of the 5,000. Now, he fed 5,000 men, not even including the women and the children. And in fact, he fed his disciples there as well, who were already tired at this point after helping him serve these 5,000. And Jesus looks at his disciples and he says, what I need you to do now is leave, go get in the boat, go to the other side before me. In other words, I'm going to meet you, but let me dismiss this 5,000. Let me pray, and I'll join you. This was in the evening when he released them. And so they get on the boat to go to the other side. Jesus is dismissing the crowd and doing what he said he was going to do, which was pray. And he looks out and he sees them in the boat, but the Bible says they were making headway painfully because the wind was against them. Now see, in verse 48, it tells us that this was during the evening when he saw them. But it also tells us about the fourth watch of the night, which we believe to be between 3 a.m. At 6 a.m., he came to them walking on the sea. Now, Jesus noticed their struggle in the evening, but he didn't come to rescue them until the fourth watch of the night. This suggests to me that just because you can't see Jesus during your storm doesn't mean he's not planning to rescue you. Jesus showed up perhaps later than desired, but we all know that whenever he shows up, he's right on time. So this reality in verse 45, he had assured them that he was going to meet them on the other side. So we would believe that simply because Jesus says, go to the other side, they should have confidence that they'll make it. Yeah, but that's easy to think about until the wind actually starts blowing and you're out in the boat on your own. Then there's this somewhat nervousness as to whether or not we're going to be able to make it through the storm. What I love about Jesus, though, is when he notices that they are definitely having a hard time making it to where he told them to go, he didn't just see them and leave it like that. He decided, you know what, let me walk to where they are, walks on water. He gets to where they are, and he gets in the boat. See, here's the reality. Jesus never promises us the absence of storms. In fact, storms are just, it's just life. They happen. Never promises us that we won't go through difficult times. Never promises us that the wind is not going to blow in our lives. But what he does promise us is that he'll never leave us. He tells us simply, you'll make it to the other side. These disciples needed reassurance. And so Jesus, understanding that, he didn't have to get in the boat. I mean, he was already walking on water. He decided to get in the boat, not for himself, but for the reassurance of the disciples that I'm in this with you and we'll make it out. Pastor Charles Stanley, who is, those of you who know Andy Stanley, he's Andy Stanley's father, and he's the pastor of the famous First Baptist Church in Atlanta. He says this, says, there is only one secure foundation, a genuine deep relationship with Jesus Christ, which can carry you through any and all turmoil. No matter what storms are raging all around you, you'll stand firm if you stand in his love. So when Jesus tells them to not be afraid and he gets in the boat with them, as soon as he got in the boat with them, the Bible says their storm ceased. Now, what I want us to ask ourselves today are a few questions. Number one, what does this story mean to you? Perhaps you're in a storm right now. Perhaps you're not in one right now, but you can think back not too long ago to when my life was not as stable as it is right now, and I've been in a storm. And even if you can't do that, if you keep living, a storm's coming, because it's just life. What does this story mean to you with regards to how Jesus responds to his disciples? Identify the storms in your life and ask yourself now, how am I handling it? Am I nervous? Am I afraid? Am I not depending on Jesus' word to trust in his word enough that I'll make it? Am I acting out in my family or whatever I'm doing negatively because I don't know how to handle storms? You are in the same predicament many of our kids are in, negatively responding to the storms of life. In Jesus' case, I told you that he's never affected by any storm. Yet, he saw those who were, and he walked on water to where they were, went through the storm in order to get to where they were, to bring some reassurance to them that everything was going to be all right. What is your radar for those around you who are in storms? Do we notice them like Jesus did? Do we take it a step further than just noticing them? Are we willing to leave our places of comfort, go to where those people who are in storms are, and get in the boat with them? Are you willing to get in the boat? Perhaps you're here today and you're saying, I have a heartbeat for reaching those kids who are caught in their storms, and I want to reach them relationally. Well, here's the deal. Youth for Christ does have a context for you to get plugged in. I mean, we definitely want your prayer. In fact, I have an email prayer team that once a month I send out a MailChimp email that gives a praise report on how good God's been, but it also lists some key things that you can pray for that month concerning our ministry. If you desire to be on that prayer team, you can maybe see me after this. I would love to add you to that prayer team, but also I just love to add you to my mailing list, where when we get our newsletters, if you're not already on the Youth of Christ mailing list, you can get our personal stories of what God's doing in the life of our leaders, but then through the kids as well, how he's shaping their lives. I'd love to add you to that. So definitely you can pray. If you want to get involved further and say, I want to give, listen, we love in-kind gifts. So if, with our students, we have to feed them on Mondays. So if you say, I'd like to provide a meal for Central High School Campus Life Club, please, by all means, do that. We have outdated game equipment. So if you say, I would like to buy you a newer Xbox and some video games so your kids can have something where you can connect with them relationally, I'd like to purchase that. By all means, do. Or if you say, you know what, I don't want to buy an item or anything like that, but I'd love to be $50 a month partner or more every month. Listen, it takes all of that for the mission to move forward. But what we're really looking for outside of all of that is for people who would be willing to get on the front lines and invest your time. Maybe in saying, okay, I want to run a small group. If you can help me connect with a group of kids, I want to run a small group, and I want to talk about life and help them navigate through life, and I want that to be my group of kids. There's a place for you. We're not stuck. Traditionally, we would use college students, but we've gotten out of that mode now, and we're saying anyone who wants to see unchurched, lost students come to know Jesus, we want you. And so, yes, you can lead the small group. You can say, I want to be a core leader. Core is simply our method of student leadership where we train our Christian students how to reach their unchurched friends in an incognito way. I tell my kids, incognito, but how you reach them without them necessarily knowing that's what you're doing, but you're being compelled by Christ to reach them. Perhaps you're saying, I don't know age-wise I would fit, but I would love to be a part of your weekly club. I'd love to go on campus and meet kids. I'd love to find out time in my schedule and make that happen. If that's you, we definitely would love to have you on our team as well. But I can't just tell you that without actually, hopefully, giving you a picture of what that looks like. So here's a clip I want you to watch that simply lays out for each and every one of you what it would look like if you were on the front lines of ministry on our team.
We aren't looking for those who want a job. We aren't looking for those who want to check a box or fulfill a commitment. We're looking for those who are passionate, for those who are brave, for those who want the name above all names to be known. It's not going to be easy. At some point, you'll walk into a room of teens you barely know, but you'll walk in with purpose. You'll walk in to build relationships with teens who otherwise may never hear the name. That beautiful name. The name that gives mercy and grace to the broken and weary. In his name, you'll tread the hallways of schools. In his name, you'll act a little crazy. You'll sit knee to knee with a kid in jail. You'll visit a teen parent in the hospital. In his name, you'll text long into the night. Christ bids you come and join him. Join him in the great work of making disciples among teens. Youth for Christ is actively looking for volunteers to join this great mission of giving life to the stories of teens. They need you to listen, to care, and to faithfully point them towards Christ. If this is you, if you're passionate for Christ, if you're willing to take a risk in His name and speak truth, then come join us. Reach the lost.
If you were here last week, we finished a series that we've been in for a few weeks, and we talked about the theology of place, that disciples are made in specific places. You don't detach from life and go do discipleship and then jump back into life. Discipleship happens in the places that we occupy every week. And everybody's place has equal relevance. So what Romel is doing is not any more important than what you're doing or what I'm doing, right? It all counts for the kingdom. But I love that we have guys like Romel come and share with us what they're doing, because it may be that some of us here in this body have a heartbeat for this kind of ministry. Now, not everybody has to go through this kind of ministry, right? A lot of us are plugged in all kinds of ways, right? And so Tim mentioned at the beginning this missions emphasis that we had last week of all these different people up here who are all throughout grace and all doing different kinds of things according to the way that the Lord has led them and called them. And so we don't want them to drop those things to come do what they're doing or do what Romel's doing. But it may be that some of us do. We do a lot of emphasis around here, and for good reason, I think, on internal community. Making sure we have healthy relationships, making sure that as we're the body of Christ, that we operate together in unity around Christ as His body. But there are opportunities for us to be reaching outside of our walls. It's why we as the missions committee, we have missions partners, so that we can provide opportunities for our folks here at Grace, if they have a heartbeat, to jump in like folks with Romel, that they can do that. Colin Sherrill does that week in and week out. I think about, I should have mentioned this earlier, I think about Johnny Safford. Johnny, when I hooked up with Johnny back 12 years ago, he helped me launch campus life at Tuscaloosa County High School. He was a heating and air person, which is great. He got into Youth for Christ, and I watched him, and I said, this guy's got a gift for teenagers. And eventually, Johnny went back to school, got a degree, and now he's a teacher and a coach at ACA, where he probably gets way more teenagers than he wants, right? I love that. Not to say that him being a teacher and a coach is any more important than being a heating and air guy. But for him and the way he's wired his calling, that's where God has him. What is the place that you are occupying? And are you growing as a disciple there, and are you making disciples there? It may be that you want to jump in with a guy like Romel to be involved in the place where he's making disciples. It's a fun gig. It can also be a heartbreaking gig at times. Is it tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow, Romel has a kickoff. So this happens in the fall semester when schools get back in. They have a big kickoff. If you want to just get a glimpse of the action, this is a fun deal to go to. It's at, what's the name of that park? Yeah, Shelby Park over on 15th Street, where the big fountain is. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock. If you want to go look at it, it's something to behold. So this is a big kickoff for the year. As we close this morning, I want to pray over Romel and Q and their family. I pray for Youth for Christ and the ministry there. And so I'm going to do that, and that'll close us out, and we will be dismissed. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you. If you had told me several years ago that I'd be the pastor here and I'd have Romel come and preach, I'd probably just laughed. What a cool thing that is. So I thank you for a friendship that you have created between us for many years now, and I thank you that we get to utilize that to advance your plans and purposes. I pray for Youth for Christ here in Tuscaloosa. I pray for Mike Green and his leadership there. I pray for Romel and his ministry, his oversight of so many staff and volunteers, his ministry to so many kids. I pray for Colin Cheryl, who's deeply involved in campus life on a week-to-week basis. Lord, we pray for encouragement for them. We pray for just open doors, Lord, that you would go before them into fields that are ripe for harvest, that you, Jesus, would penetrate the hearts and lives of teenagers through the ministry of Youth for Christ. And Lord, I pray that you would lead each of us to be sensitive to where it is you've called us, the place that you have called us to learn and grow in following you, and to help others learn to grow and follow you. Whether that's with Romel, or it's with someone else, or it's in our homes, or wherever that may be, week in and week out. Lord, it seems to me that you have been with us this morning. And so I pray that you'll be with us as we go out from here, that what we have said and done here might bring glory and honor to you in all the things we do and say this week. It's in the powerful name of Jesus we pray. Amen. You are dismissed.
We didn't agree. I would agree. I would agree. Good job.